Greetings, welcome to another day of Autoforge development. We have started working on the UI once again, trying to clean it up and just get it to a good state. So the UI was implemented about 2 years ago, and that was more or less copied from my previous game, Korea, which was implemented like 5 years ago. And so a lot of the code was kind of old and crufty and hadn't really been reviewed heavily. And honestly, it still needs a lot more work. If I were to want to bring it up to, I think, like my current coding standards, but I got about 90% of the way there by just like kind of cleaning up, and that's what we've been working on. And I've gotten a lot of that done already, and from yesterday's work. So one of the big things that we're doing was trying to bring the UI scripts to teal. So this is what our UI scripts were looking like, where we had like it would run, and like we're expecting it to be ran by the engine, and there's a lot of like pre-setup and then like post-setup, kind of like our prefabs, right? And so there's a lot of expectations on um like the current state of the engine and everything. And this also had some like kind of wonky um hot reloading going on, and obviously no teal happening whatsoever, no type checking, which is a big issue. So spent a good chunk of yesterday at the start looking at how can we bring this over to teal. And also, if we can incorporate entirely into teal, we could probably utilize all of the hot reloading work that we did for teal, like a week or two ago. So this is what I came up with. Pretty straightforward. The biggest thing really is that we are, it's now using teal. It's a little prototype that we set up, and then we instantiate a new object of the UI, and we create a dialog. So it's kind of like the teal prototype is kind of responsible for owning this like underlying dialog or UI view that the UI manager will create. And then we can like set up a script update, which gets called by the UI manager, and then we properly initialize the dialog, and finally then we set up all of the actual elements that are going into the script, which I haven't like finished an example of this quite yet, but probably today do that. And then we can have hot reloading. And I also made a cool little feature addition to the hot reloading where we can pass in a function to the reload, which says, hey, if we are reloading, or whenever we reload instances of this thing, call this function and pass in that instance. And so we have just a tiny little function in here, which I haven't even implemented yet. I thought I did. I had copied it actually. But basically all it does is says, hey, reload this thing and reset it up. Like clear out all of the UI stuff and, reinitialize it. And yeah, beyond that, I worked a lot on the C++ side of things, trying to get it to a good place where if I go to our UI manager, it's probably the best place to go. Just get it to a good place that has like higher quality standard of coding. There's a lot of stuff I needed to tidy up. I moved over all of our raw pointers that I was using 2 years ago to be smart pointers, and thought about the ownership for things. And yeah, cleaned up everything. So we're no longer expecting some initial state for the engine. Actually, the UI manager itself doesn't have any responsibility whatsoever of loading up all of these UI scripts like I had before. Instead, the game will now say, hey, I want to create a new instance of this test UI, inside of the scripts. I want to create this new instance of a test UI, and the UI manager, we can tell it to do that. And that also means that we can have multiple instances of our UI. Yeah, and so that's pretty much it. One really cool thing that I got working that I was proud of is some actual generics happening inside of Teal. That was something that I have tried to get working a few times before, but have just continuously ran into issues with it. But I finally figured out how, and also got Lua exposed to do that. So here we have our add functions. This is for an element group, so we can add it or associate. I think I have an example here with associate. So we can associate an element when we say, hey, E, so it takes an element of E and returns E, which is really cool because then that makes it so that we can pass in a section here to our dialog associate, and it knows that we are returning a section as well. Without that, we would have to cast this or say that this section is an element, and then whenever we are getting the return value, we need to say it's a section, and so that just kind of really clean things up nicely. So anyways, that's going to be it for today. Thank you for watching. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.